Back in mid-2018, I attempted to seriously kill myself for the first time. Up until that point, I had been suicidal, which had manifested in self-harm and in bouts of me leaving the house, going for long walks, hoping that I would somehow drop dead along the way, and then just sort of returning home alive by default. But this time was different. This time, I tied a noose from memory, I put the noose around my neck, I tied a 15-pound dumbbell to the other end of the noose, I went into my father's bathroom, got a stool, and attempted to hang myself. Now, the more astute of you might have noticed me say a 15-pound dumbbell, and then noticed that I definitely don't weigh less than 50 pounds. And you'd be correct, which is why I'm still here right now. The cool thing about killing yourself, or about attempting to, is that the more complicated the attempt is, the more likely it is to fail. If you get a gun and point it at your own head at point blank range and then shoot yourself, you'll probably succeed. But if you decide to go the Rube Goldberg-esque route by making hanging yourself needlessly complicated, you will still be alive today. When I kicked that stool out from underneath me and began to strangle myself, I was swept away by two thoughts that were so truthful and so potent in that truth that every other word I had ever uttered in my life up to that point seemed deceitful by comparison. The first thought was a primal and fearful shit, I do not want to die. And the second thought was an equally primal, if not quite so fearful, fuck, this kind of feels good. I've suddenly found something to keep living for. And that is genuinely, unironically, why I have never attempted to kill myself ever again. Because you don't really get much lower than I tried to commit suicide, but I just masturbated instead without even really bothering to take the noose off from around my neck. And that promise has remained true to this day. I've never once tried to kill myself again after that. I don't plan on killing myself, and if I ever do die and my death is ruled as a suicide, definitely investigate the person who came to that ruling, because I am not going to do that. But yes, several years ago, I made the decision to never, ever kill myself. And that was a very good decision to make. Objectively good, no notes, actually some notes. Because where does that leave me? Where does that leave a depressed person who thought suicide was the answer, ruled out suicide as an answer, and then is left with no answers? Because I don't want to speak for everyone, but for me personally, knowing that at any time I could kill myself gave me a certain joy to life. Because I at least had, at the back of my mind, some sort of control. And once I took that away, I had one less option, one less amount of control over my own life. I believe that at the end of the pit that we metaphorically fall down to reach rock bottom at, there is a trampoline. Because after every time I have self-harmed or drank myself silly or engaged in self-destructive behavior, I've bounced back just a little bit, just a smidgen, just enough for me to look at my life, to look at the blood seeping from my wounds, to look at the vomit encrusted on my shirt, and think I could be better than this. And it's hard to think life can get better than this outside of moments where your life has become so shitty as a result of your own actions. And after I decided not to kill myself, I rode a bit of that trampoline bounce for I don't know how long, but I know that it ended quickly. After it ended, I was no longer plummeting towards rock bottom in any capacity, but I also was not making any effort to crawl out of the pit I had fallen down. Once you remove the desire to commit suicide from a depressed, unstable, joyless person, you're left with a depressed, unstable, joyless person. It just kind of means that you've decided to remain alive, but you don't know how to cope with being alive, because up to this point you thought you were definitely going to kill yourself, so why bother trying to plan for the future? Why bother trying to go to college to get a job? Why bother saving money? Why bother finding things that you enjoy doing? So I haven't really done any of that up to that point. And I didn't have the proper motivation to do any of that because it felt like so Much of my life had already been wasted, and I just figured, fuck, I will just live, I will live, and I won't die, and I guess I'll get through this somehow. I will actively decay, I will live to 60, and I'll, hello baby, whoosh, my life will go by. Maybe that's how everyone does it. Maybe that's just what life is. Obviously that mindset is very unhealthy. Events in one's life are usually forming a foundation underneath you to support who you are as a person. But for me, the events that were supposed to act as blocks for the pyramid and foundation of who I was, I instead just held on my shoulders and above my head, allowing it to weigh me down into the muck and quicksand of existence below me. After my suicide attempt, I did genuinely jump into trying to find a meaning to life. And I think I did. I came to many useful, solid conclusions about living. I kept reminding myself of them over and over and over again. But there's only so many times that you can tell yourself, hey, if you wouldn't talk to a friend this way, why would you talk to yourself this way? Hey, we're all humans, we all have that in common, and that is a shared bond, and we should treat each other well. Hey, if you would not invalidate the experience that you are going through, if that experience was being lived through by someone else, then why are you invalidating it for yourself? And that just went on and on and on until those mantras became mundane. Hey, Harry Potter killed Voldemort, and now what? Cinderella married Prince Charming, and now what? The big bad evil that made the entire world miserable and awful was destroyed by the good guys who've done nothing morally ambiguous in their entire lives. And now what? You don't want to kill yourself anymore. You promised you will not because you know it is futile. Now what? And I feel like daily life just resides in that moment. And I think it's because we always yearn for the thing that makes us happy and never really expect to get there. And once we are in there, we realize, oh shit, there's so much more ahead of you. We long for the future, not really taking the time to realize that the present moment might be making us miserable, and by the time we reach the future, the present moment will have definitely caught up. When I was suicidal, and when I was miserable, and when I was constantly dwelling on the miserable state of the world, I was at least passionate. I at least had hatred or anger or fury at the indignities that I was suffering and that other people were suffering. But then afterwards, I became empty. And it's not the type of emptiness that comes from realizing that inherently life has no meaning. It's the emptiness that comes from realizing inherently life has no meaning. Oh wait, life has the meaning that we give to it. Oh wait, I don't know what meaning to give to my own life. After deciding to not kill myself, then after trying to find a meaning to life, then after kind of finding answers and being really dissatisfied with them, I convinced myself that in order to live a healthy life, in order to not feel anger and misery, I just had to get through the day without feeling anything. And I did that by just becoming numb. And I continued to live my life in a very numb manner until an ex of mine from high school died. Tuesday, March 30th, 2021. In an attempt to bring some sort of structure to the instability that is my life, I've decided to take up journaling yet again. In addition to healthier eating, yoga, meditation, and exercise, it seems to be among the hobbies of those who appear to not be mentally unwell, unlike yours truly. So here I sit, pretending as if my entire right arm doesn't already ache a mere 2 minutes into this exercise, as that would most definitely be quite lame, an adjective I refuse to believe could ever be used to describe a bed-riddled, phone-addicted, depressed mass of flesh and bone, such as myself. My initial thought upon putting pen to paper was that I would not have a great deal to transcribe. This assumption is turning out to be incorrect, because as I continue to write, I already find myself intimidated by the sheer amount of mess that resides within my brain lump. Perhaps this is the exact reason journaling is so highly recommended. Who knew that happy people might actually be onto something? Fuck 'em. Up until a few weeks ago, I was quite discontent, and my method of coping with said discontent was to distract myself from reality, which only served to heighten my discontent. I would wake up at 1 p.m. because I'd gone to sleep at 4 a.m. to make up for the fact that I'd woken up at 1 p.m., which was to make up for the fact that I'd gone to sleep at 4 a.m. I would spend my entire day glued to my phone, lost in an endless abyss of distractions, just so I wouldn't have to address the absolute nothing I had done all day because I was distracting myself. The only change that occurred in a cyclical pattern of procrastination was the amount of hatred I felt for myself. Slowly, that self-hatred grew, like a slithering mass of heaving, suffocating tentacles, until even spending every free moment with my senses plugged into a video or TV show was not enough to prevent me from being overcome, pulled into the core of my own disgust with myself. I've given up on suicide long ago, so it was pleasant for my mind to not default to ending it all, as it once would. My desire for self-improvement was not unprecedented, however. There have been a handful of occasions where I've hated myself with such a vigor that my passion to be better than this would rise and overcome. These spurts of motivation would only last a few weeks, however, before I eventually returned to my self-destructive habits, with no clear memory of why I was so motivated to change in the first place. A prominent mental barrier I've faced/am facing is that I worry I will take up all these beneficial habits only to still be depressed. Conversely, I've also worried that I might actually be cured of all depression, so maybe I was faking my clinical depression. Furthermore, mental illness is what I perceive as constituting the basis of who I am fundamentally. If I actually improve, who am I? Am I still me? A strange question for someone so unhappy with themselves to ask, quite surely. I assumed overcoming this barrier would require some sort of complex spiritual journey. But honestly, the simple answer is that I'm definitely not going to be happy all day, every day, even if I'm doing everything correctly. It's so simple it's almost stupid, and I'm tempted to reject it on those grounds alone, but alas. Sometimes lifelong troubles are put to rest with a mantra almost painfully obvious. Another motivation for my recent efforts to be slightly less shit is the recent death of a high school friend. The subject matter is complex, so that's for a different entry, but in an embarrassingly story-like way, it feels as if an old friend's death should spark some sort of personal change, right? I hesitate to use this terminology, but it feels as if it would be a waste of Dennis's death if I didn't use the significance of that event to act as some form of motivation. So far, the death itself hasn't quite impacted me yet. If anything, my preoccupation with travel plans has arrested the majority of my focus. Interacting with former high school friends who I haven't had meaningful conversations with in 5 or 6 years has actually been surprisingly pleasant, if anything. A few of us initially had trouble reconciling the excitement we felt at reuniting with, the morbid reason for the reunion, but we all agreed Dennis would want us to enjoy each other's company. Besides, it would be a travesty if we were all together again and actively chose to be sad for the entirety of the event. We're all being brought together after all this time. We should make the most of it. The funeral is in a week, and thankfully my parents were kind enough to purchase tickets on my behalf. I await the event and wonder how my emotional state will be once I actually see his body. There's so much to address here, but good night for now. My hand aches. In the months following Dennis's death, I remember rearranging the furniture in my room so that it wouldn't have been the same bedroom I was in when I was depressed, so that I could start in a physically different environment on my new latest journey to try to become better. I remember trying to look at life with a different context, not necessarily because of the death itself, but because of the mindset that death is a big change. It's a big event. And if I can't get myself together after a big event, when will I ever? I don't know what advice to give anyone who went through the same thing I did, who tried to kill themselves and then didn't, and then went on with life being just as bad as it was before, just without the looming idea of suicide at the back of your head. Because what happened for me is not something I would want to have happen to anyone else. I don't want someone close to you to die in order for you to reevaluate your entire thing. All I can say is that Dennis's death, if anything, gave me momentum. it gave me new emotions to work with. It gave me happiness and celebration in addition to deep sadness and sorrow. It was a crazy palette to work with after so many years of feeling almost nothing. If anything, it just gave me the momentum. It gave me the push to be able to rearrange my room, to look forward to a trip, to go on that trip, to leave the physical space that I was in and that had for so long very closely associated with my own misery, to rekindle relationships with my friends and to make new friendships, to come back from that trip with a new mindset, and very shortly going into a new relationship, which ultimately did not last, but which in itself gave me more momentum, which was able to spur me on to find a new partner, and to further then realize that I'm still good at reconnecting with people. And oh my god, why haven't I made any friends in the last 2 years? Wait, I'm making friends all of a sudden now. Oh wait, I've been so unhappy. Holy shit. Once that momentum carried me past a certain threshold, I realized that I was very, very fully capable of walking on my own. I crawled out of the pit using that momentum and started living a life that I'm really, really happy with. Momentum is so important when you're trying to become better, because it's so much easier to clean the house when you walk in through the door and are already on your feet than it is when you've been sitting on the couch for the last 5 hours. And it's so fucking hard to just say momentum is the key, because momentum is fucking difficult to carry along with you. It's difficult to keep making work and keep fresh for the rest of your life. But the thing is, you don't really have to think about it for the rest of your life, because at a certain point, the momentum is not necessary. All it really needs to do is get you off your feet, or to keep you on your feet. Momentum does not need to derive from something as large or as impactful as a death. It could be this video. It could be you seeing a cat on the street. It could be you watching a good movie, or it could be the new year, or it could be literally any number of things. And the weird thing is, I'm now very content with my life, and I'm so content that, like, looking back at that period of my life feels so far away. I think part of being depressed, you think, God, if I get better now, I have to think about all the times that I could have gotten better, and I should have just gotten better sooner, so I'm just not going to get better right now, because if I got better right now, I would regret all the years that I spent being miserable. But the cool thing about getting better is you feel like such a different person from who you are when you were miserable, that all you can really think about is there's still a lot ahead of me. And I guess if you find the answer to this, the idea of having momentum carry you through to a state of contentment eventually, if you find that unsatisfying, satisfying conclusions to the minutiae of daily life are impossible to encounter, because that's not daily life anymore. That's just sort of going to sleep and waking up again. This goes for everything, whether it's trying to better yourself at a hobby or whether it's trying to live your life in a more meaningful way. But there is no sentence or set of words or anything that I can say or anyone else can say that upon hearing it will make you think, aha, now my body will act of its own accord. I will now be good at living. Thank you, kind stranger. I'm fixed now. I just needed to hear some words and we're good to go. Everything is going to require effort. And when you're depressed, effort's very difficult. And just truthfully, effort is much easier when you have momentum. When you're already running, it's easier to take another step than it is when you're standing still. I'm living a very good life. I have a very bright future ahead of me. I feel like I'm bragging. I'm not. I'm just really happy to be happy. But yeah, let's talk about me again, because it's been a while. Hello, it's been like a year. I'm sorry I've been gone. I don't really plan on being a YouTuber. I was deeply unhappy as someone who was trying to be a YouTuber. But I want to make videos. Making videos used to make me happy before I became a YouTuber. And I do want to continue this. I'm not going to be doing anything weekly. Don't expect this video where I talk about suicide to be followed by reaction content or me eating everything at an Arby's. I'm doing good. How are you guys? I'm probably gonna go stick a finger on my ass within the next few minutes because I've always been curious about what that would feel like. So to wrap this up, if you're still here and if you're still kind of unsatisfied and didn't really find the answer you were looking for, all I can really tell you is that if you're searching for a meaningful and satisfying answer to it all that will fix everything, you're not going to find it anywhere, especially not here, because happy endings are kind of
Who's Gucci?